All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk today about area today. So we talked about circumference yesterday. We're going to talk about area. So let's start with redefining, make sure we're clear on these terms, and we'll look at the formula as we get into area. So diameter, remember, is the distance across a circle. Okay, so if we have a circle, oops, try again. You have a circle, there's the diameter. Okay. Radius is distance from the center to the edge. Okay, the radius is half of the diameter. Circumference is the distance around a circle. Okay, so if you measure all the way around the circle, that's the circumference. Okay, we had two formulas for it. Pi times the diameter, or, and this is the same thing really, 2 times pi times the radius. Because remember, 2 times the radius is the same as the diameter. Okay, so those are the formulas that we looked at and used a little bit yesterday. Remember what this relationship comes from. So this relationship comes from anytime you have a circle, if you take the distance around the circle and divide it by the distance across, you get this magic number pi, right here. And that is what the Greeks discovered a long time ago. Now the area is the space, the amount of space inside a circle. Okay, so if you remember a little bit about area, okay, when we're dealing with area, we're not just measuring a distance. We're not measuring how far it is around or across a circle. A distance is a one-dimensional kind of measurement. Okay? You can measure with a ruler. Okay, this is area. This is amount of space. When you're dealing with space, you can't measure this one-dimensionally. So this isn't like a certain number of inches, right? Think about trying to measure this with a ruler. Right? It wouldn't really work. Okay. So when we're dealing with area, we're going to be measuring things in square units. Okay. So instead of like inches, for instance, right, an inch might be this line. A square inch would be a square that's 1 inch by 1 inch. So it's 1 inch on each side. Okay. So I'm thinking, whenever I'm dealing with area, I'm thinking how many of these square units could I fit inside of this circle? Okay. So that's a way of measuring the space inside of the shape. The formula for the area of a circle is right here. Pi times the radius squared. Now, one thing I mentioned before, that I mentioned yesterday, was that I like to use the 2 pi r formula because it's very similar to the pi r squared formula. Okay? Which it can be tricky because you want to make sure you don't get them confused, but one can also help you remember the other. Okay, so if we remember that they have the same pieces, but with area, the 2 is a exponent, is the radius squared, whereas with circumference, it's just being multiplied by 2. Okay? The way I like to remember that is area is measured in square units, so that's the one where we're squaring the radius. And again, remember, to square a number means to multiply it by itself. So let's try to apply that. So pi times the radius squared. If I remember my order of operations, I have multiplication and I have an exponent. Okay, so if you look at PEMDAS, you'll notice that exponent comes first before multiplication does. Okay, that means I have to square my radius first, and then I'm going to multiply it by pi. And just like yesterday, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So don't worry about rounding. The fact that we're using this is going to round it enough. Okay. All right, so pi times radius squared. Radius in this case is 3. I'm just going to square 3. So 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. And I'm going to take that 9 and I'm going to multiply it by pi, by which I'm using 3.14. So 9 times 3.14 gives me 28.26. So this is 28.26. It was supposed to measure in yards, so the area is in yards squared. Okay, now I always have to have a squared unit whenever we're dealing with area. Okay, same idea over here, but if we're given the diameter, remember for the formula I want my radius, so the first thing I have to do is cut it in half to find the radius. So that's kind of the opposite of what I was doing yesterday. If you remember when I was trying to find the circumference, which was pi times diameter, if I was given the radius, I doubled it so I could multiply the diameter times pi. Here, if I'm giving the diameter, I want to cut it in half to find the radius so that I can use my formula with the radius. Okay, so again, it's pi times the radius squared. Okay, the radius is 5. 5 squared is 25. So I'm going to multiply 25 times 3.14, which gives me 78.5. So the area inside here is about 78.5. It's measured in inches squared. Okay. So remembering what that means, a square inch is a square that's 1 inch by 1 inch. Okay, so if I had a bunch of these 1 inch by 1 inch squares, this area tells me I could fit about 78 and a half of these squares inside this circle before I ran out of room. Okay, so why don't you try these two? I'll pause it here, see what you can come up with for the area. Again, don't worry about rounding, just use 3.14, keep what that gives you, and we'll see how you did. All right, welcome back. Hopefully these are the answers that you got. In this first one, we were given the radius, so I can just go ahead and square it. So 2 squared is 4. Then multiply that by pi, 3.14. Gives me 12.56. This was measured in feet, so that means this is in feet squared. All right, for this one, we were given the diameter. So first thing I need to do, because I need the radius for my formula, is cut the diameter in half. So 8 centimeter diameter means I have a 4 centimeter radius. Okay. Formula tells me to square that radius. 4 squared is 16. And multiply that by pi. So 16 times 3.14 gives me 50.24 centimeters squared. Remember, it's always units squared when you're dealing with area. Okay. All right, let's see if we can go backwards on this one. So this one says the area is about 314. Find the radius. Okay. So think about what we do to get the area. It's 314. So 314 equals pi times the radius squared. So again, thinking about our equation solving stuff of working backwards, well, we're trying to find the radius here. So let's divide both sides by pi. Let me bring out here, have more space. So pi times the radius squared. So if I divide by pi, which is 3.14, 314 divided by 3.14 is 100. So I have 100 equals the radius squared. To figure out what the radius is, I'm going to undo squaring, which remember is the square root. That's the opposite of squaring. So the square root of 100 is 10. It's working backwards. That would give me a radius of 10. Right? 10 squared is 100. 100 times 3.14 give me the 314. Let me try this one. So if the area is 54 feet squared, what's the radius? So I'll pause it here, see what you can come up with. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got for the radius right around 4.1. So we're given the area. Remember, area is pi times the radius squared. So if I divide by pi, I get back to the radius squared. Right? I take the radius squared times pi to get this. So 54 divided by 3.14 is about 17.2. So that's the radius squared. All right, what the radius is, I just take the square root of this. Gives me about 4.1. Okay, so you plug 4.1 into the formula, square it, multiply it by pi, you get close to this. All right, so let's look at a little application question here quick. So your friend offers you one large cookie with a diameter of 8 inches or three smaller cookies with a diameter of 4 inches each. Which option would give you more cookie to eat? All right, so take your time, try to figure out which one you think would give you more cookie. Then we'll come back and see if you're right. All right, so let's figure this out. The large cookie is got a diameter of 8 inches, which means the radius is 4 inches. Okay, to find the area, that's 4 squared times pi times 3.14. Now, instead of getting my answers all messy with decimals, because I'm just going to be comparing these, let's keep it exact. So 4 squared is 16. So 16 times pi, or 16 pi, is the exact area. Anytime you're dealing with the exact area of or circumference of a circle, you would need to have pi in it. Right? Remember, if you use 3.14, it's not exact anymore. That's an estimate. But 16 times pi is exactly what this area is. Okay, if I look at these each have a diameter of 4, so that's a radius of 2. So the area of one of these would be 2 squared, or 4 times pi. Okay, so this is 4 pi, this is 4 pi, and this is 4 pi. Okay, so we can treat those kind of like variables, right? If I have 4 pi's plus another 4 pi's plus another 4 pi's, that's a total of 12 pi's. I'm just adding the number part. Okay, so those three cookies together are a total of 12 times pi cookie. Well, this big one is 16 times pi. Well, 16 times number is going to be more than 12 times that same number. Right, so multiplying by a bigger number makes the number bigger. So that is the better deal. That's more cookie to eat. All right. So if there's time for this, try this partner challenge. Let's see what you can do. A circle has a circumference of this. Tell me what the area is. Okay, so you have to work backwards and then forward to answer that question. If you think you know what it is, let me know and I'll tell you if you're right or not. All right, that's all I got for you. Go ahead and good luck, and make sure you ask questions if you have them.